Hey guys, welcome back to Readings with Terrance Weaver. I'm Tarrance, and today we're going to talk about a section of the book that I really enjoyed writing. It's called God's Forewarning. I know in life you guys may have encountered God through premonitions or a deja vu type of situation. And that's what kind of happened here in this chapter in my life. There's a segment of my life where I felt like God was speaking to me, showing me some things, and I wanted to take the opportunity today to read to you. If you will sit back, relax, and enjoy the reading. God's forewarning. For a while I was angry with God because I figured that he had turned his back on me. In Matthew chapter 27, verse 46, and Mark 15:34, Jesus shouted with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some Christians think that this cry was Jesus in his purest form because he felt betrayed by man and deserted by God. I felt like Jesus did in my darkest hour. Man had betrayed me, and I felt like God had deserted me and left me feeling alone in this world. It seemed that God took the two most important people out of my life, and although God had a resting place for them in heaven, he was also preparing me for what was to come in my future. One night in November of 1994, I went to bed like most high school freshmen. I would soon find out that this night would serve as my anchor to my faith and is why I would trust in God. I went to sleep and I had what I thought was a dream. In this dream, I was standing off to the side and I watched the scenes unfold from a third person's perspective. What I witnessed was my family living their normal day-to-day lives. My mother and I were living in the same apartment on Carver Terrace, and then suddenly a great sadness fell upon me. And what I saw next had me scared. It made me pray for things that I shouldn't have prayed for to happen. What I dreamt about was my brother being shot. I couldn't see which brother it was or who shot him, but it felt so real. It scared me so much that I woke up in a panic. My heart was racing, I was out of breath, and it was almost as if it was really happening. Once I realized it was just a dream, my heart rate started to calm down, and I tried to make sense of it all. As I laid in my twin-size bed, I realized that this dream was a little bit different. It was almost as if I was awake, but I brought part of the dream back into reality with me. I could still visualize everything happening, including a lot of the minute details. It was then that I got out of bed, onto my knees, and I prayed to God for it not to happen. And this next part I'm almost ashamed to admit, and I've only told a handful of people about how my heart turned cold on that night. I was so confused on why this dream felt so real and why it felt like a vision. I never had a vision from God before that time, but I knew it was something different about this dream. So I prayed. If this was a vision and it had to come to pass, please God, don't let it happen to Double J. If it had to happen, please let it happen to my older brother, Carnell. You see, Carnell did not have a close relationship with me at that time, and WJ was more of my shelter from the world. Carnell was my oldest brother, and he left the house when he was about 16 to start and raise his own family. So we didn't have a lot of earlier memories together because I was about 5 years old when he moved out. Whereas with WJ, he assumed the role of the man of the house. In my life, he helped my mom raise me, and he moved. Even when he moved out with his own family, he took the time to explain life to me and walk me through it. WJ corrected all of my wrongdoings with discipline and consequences while keeping my best interests at heart. He taught me how to fish, hunt, defend myself, and also appreciate life. So that was my reasoning behind my prayer to God after waking up from this dream, even though it wasn't right. Now, growing up, I was always taught that if you dream about a fish, that means that somebody in your close circle is pregnant. Or if you had a bad dream about someone, you don't tell them or it may come true. I know that this is superstition, but I think that everyone's life involves a little superstition through their family traditions. And with that said, I was always afraid to tell WJ about the dream, so I never did. A couple weeks passed by, but my anticipation of the dream never went away. I knew that the time was near when my brother started talking and acting as if he had the same dream. And what I mean is this. He would come into my mom's room and sit on the edge of her bed every night just to talk. These talks are different from the perspective that it was for 5 nights in a row from 12 a.m. until 3 a.m. I would normally pass out while they talked, and WJ would say things like, "Mom, please don't allow anything to happen to my kids. Do not let another man raise my daughter." My mom would tell him to stop talking like that and go back to bed, but he insisted as if he knew something that we did not. December 9th is a day that be etched in my brain forever. That day was cold and cloudy, and the sky was very gray. The weather was misting most of the day, and there was a strange presence to that day that I had never felt before. My brother left my place about 10 p.m. that night, and as he walked out of our apartment, he told my mom, "Remember to take care of my kids if I don't make it back." And then suddenly there was a knock at the door at approximately 1 a.m. in the morning that startled us. My mom asked me to get the door because she could not move due to a sudden pain in her upper back. So I answered the door. And it was my cousin informing us that we needed to come with her because there was some police activity at Joe's trailer. I went back into the room where my mom was, and I told her what I had just been informed and told her that we needed to leave. My mom couldn't physically move her body for about 15 minutes because she was in so much pain. Once the pain subsided, we started our journey over to Mr. Joe's single-wide trailer. I can still visualize the scene as we drove down the main road into Charlotte Heights into the neighborhood where the event took place. I can remember seeing an infinite number of blue and red lights off in the distance to my right as we approached the trailer park. And slowly we made a right turn off the paved road onto a dirt road that would soon lead us up to his trailer. And the distance from the main road to Mr. Joe's trailer was about 200 yards. It was the longest ride I ever had to take into the unknown. Due to the amount of police cars that was there, we had to exit the car and walk another 60 yards to this location. And once we were there, our curiosity grew with every passing minute because nobody was giving us any insight on what was going on. The only information that we had was that there was an altercation at this residence. As my mom and I watched the police officers scurrying in and out of the trailer, we became restless and leaned on the car behind us. There's 1,000 questions running through my head as I tried to make sense of this situation. I mean, where's WJ? What has he done this time? I wonder if he got in a fight or something and did WJ win? I don't see WJ. They must have him in the trailer, or maybe they have taken him to jail already. Man, has he done it this time? Mom's gonna be pissed when she talks to him. You see, my brother was no stranger to trouble, and by no means was he perfect. But the fact remains that he is my brother, and I will love him no matter what he's done. During the process of my mind speeding up and rambling on with questions, my mom's mind was slowing down and processing her environment. And then suddenly she leaped off the car that was once helping to support our weight, and she started to scream, "Oh Lord, no, no, no." My heart started to race again because I can see the panic on her face. So I asked her, "What's wrong, Mom?" And she said with such fear and defeat in her heart, "This is a coroner's car." So then she proceeded to tell me that they're the ones that transport the dead bodies to the morgue. And all of a sudden, my body was ambushed with fear, panic, and rage. I thought to myself, my God, what has WJ gone and done this time? And I started to evaluate my surroundings with a purpose at this point. Then I started to focus on a police cruiser sitting off in the distance near the car that I had gotten out of. I can see the crown of what seemed to be the head in the window. And as my mom sat in a state of panic near the coroner's car, staring intensely at the front door of the trailer, I could not take my eyes off this one particular police cruiser. So I glanced at my mom once more before I started to walk slowly towards the police cruiser. With every step towards this car, I became overwhelmed with sadness from the thoughts of Joe's family being mad at WJ and my family. I couldn't imagine how Joe's daughter was going to cope with losing her father. I was gazing at the ground trying to process all of my thoughts in my head as I walked the 60 yards back towards the car to see WJ. And I noticed as I approached the cruiser that his head was leaned against the back seat. And at this point, I found myself nearing the rear door on the driver's side of the car with very little sight due to the really bright flashing police lights on his cruiser. The silhouette of my brother slowly turns and looks at me. And it was then that reality slapped me in my face because Mr. Joe was staring at me. I could not move my feet, scream, or even begin to process what was happening. What I was seeing. As I glared at him with his hands bound behind his back in the back of the car, he had a look on his face that I'll never forget. It wasn't a killer scowl or an emotion in his face as one would expect. It was almost as if he was searching for forgiveness with regret. As reality started seeping back into my head, tears started flowing from my eyes as I looked back at the trailer where the coroner's car is now backing up to the front door. And I started to run back up to the house and I yelled to my mom, "It's WJ, Mom!" And at that time she replied, "I know, baby." And we watched helplessly as they brought the black body bag out and placed him in the car. And I can remember staring at the outline of his body in the bag and realizing that death can rob a person of their hope, security, love of life, the happiness, dreams, and even the view of invincibility, and replace it with all sorts of darkness. This darkness is a seed that will grow in time into an uncontrollable rage, devouring every concept of a good life and giving birth to more revenge and more contagious seeds. As the coroner closed the door to the car, I glanced back at the police cruiser again with an overwhelming sense of darkness and anticipation at the idea of our paths crossing again. It wasn't until after we went back to my mom's best friend's house that I realized that my dream had just morphed into a vision. What God showed me months prior had come to pass, but God ignored all of my prayers that I sent to him about saving Double J. Now that I'm older, I realized that God was preparing me with the vision, warning me with Double J's prophecy, and confirming everything with my mother's back pain. Do you remember when I mentioned to you earlier that we heard a knock at the door and my mother was in such pain that she could not move? That was the first time she had ever experienced back pain of that magnitude. There's a certain connection that a mother has with her children that is difficult to explain. I mean, how could she feel a sharp pain in her back the moment that she woke up without having an inclination that her son's life was in trouble? How could she feel a pain in the upper part of her back in the very spot that he was shot? Some might call it a telepathic link between parents and their kids. Some may call it a coincidence that it even happened that way. And to be honest, others may not even believe it happened at all. What I do know is that our Father's love for his kids is so profound that he subjected his son to die for our sins. I mean, in the beginning, I mentioned to you how in Mark 15:34, Jesus shouted with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" It was almost as if God the Father turned his back on Jesus. Maybe God didn't abandon Jesus, but turned his face away because he couldn't bear seeing the pain on his face, but only wanted to focus on the pain that they felt and shared together. Maybe he was gathering the full experience of life from a human's point of view and confirming a mother's love for her son.